What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports. You're watching our college football channel, and I'm going to give you my updated college football playoff predictions. Not much has changed. One little subtle change from last week's predictions, which I will show you, but it kind of just feels like we're not going to see that big upset. We're not going to see the drama, the chaos that we normally see at the end of the season. I don't know why that is, but it feels like we're not going to see it. We've had several opportunities over the last few weeks, and it's just not happening. We're just not seeing it. The top teams have kind of separated themselves a little bit, and the teams that are right behind them, besides one team really, they just don't have any opportunities, in my opinion, to move into the top four unless something crazy happens. And again, it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. I hope it does. I love the chaos. I love the craziness of college football, and hopefully we get a little something. Maybe there's something that'll shake things up, but you're going to see in my predictions, I don't really think that it's going to happen. So Alabama still for me number one. I think they win the SEC championship. Florida will be a tough test. They'll score some points, but Bama will score even more points. Alabama will win that one in a shootout, so I'm going with Alabama to take the number one seed. If they win in a close game and Notre Dame were to blow out Clemson, that's the only way I could see Alabama not being number one if they win. But even then, I think the committee probably will put them at number one. They would have a win over Florida, a win over Georgia, who is a top 10 team in the committee's view, and Texas A&M, also a top 10 team. So you're talking about three top 10 wins. Bama will be number one, and I think Clemson will beat Notre Dame. I'm still predicting that, although I'm a little more hesitant. For a while, I thought, Clemson will definitely win this game. They're going to win the rematch. But Notre Dame just continues to play really well. The way they controlled the line of scrimmage of this game, that's what concerns me if I'm a Clemson fan. But still, with the players out for Clemson, the fact that it was on the road, the fact that it went into overtime, also a lot of things really went against Clemson in that first half. I still think Clemson will get the rematch here. I think they'll win the ACC championship, and they'll go on to the number 2 seed. So number 3 for me is Ohio State. I think they went out. There's no real argument, no discussion anymore about them not making it if they win out, unless Florida beats Alabama and Clemson does beat Notre Dame. That's when there'll be a discussion about Ohio State, and potentially they could be left out in that scenario. So that's the one thing. But other than that, Ohio State I think is in. I think they're the 3 seed. I think they do pass Notre Dame because they'll be undefeated. There's also a possibility that Notre Dame stays at 3, Ohio State stays at 4. But I'm going to say Notre Dame goes to number 4. I think the undefeated season for Ohio State, the fact that Notre Dame would have that one win over Clemson, but it was a win at home. It was a close game. Clemson had some players out. I think it's a razor-thin margin, but I think the committee does go with Ohio State at number 3 and Notre Dame at number 4. So this is the exact same playoff field that I had last week. This is really what will happen if the favorites went out. Clemson will be favored against Notre Dame. Alabama will be favored against Florida. Ohio State will be favored against everyone that they play. I'm sorry, Texas A&M fans, you will not make it in if Ohio State wins out. It's just not going to happen. At least you're not going to take Ohio State's spot. There is another path for Texas A&M if of course, Notre Dame were to beat Clemson. You got it. If you're one of those teams that's on the outside looking in, you really need Notre Dame to beat Clemson or Ohio State to get upset, something like that. And you don't need Florida to beat Alabama, because then both teams, I think, will be in. But this is my prediction. Again, no change. I think the favorites will win out just because it's just not trending in the direction of upsets. We just have not seen them. And then we go through, I'm going to go ahead and go through my predictions for who I think is going to win it all. I still think Alabama will beat Notre Dame. It'll be a close game, not a down-to-the-wire either team could win type close game, but a game that is within 10 points or so throughout the game. Alabama, I think, will kind of be in control, but you'll kind of think maybe Notre Dame could win it. Maybe they could come back, and every time they make a big play, Alabama will come back and answer. One of those types of games that'll be close, competitive, but not a game that Notre Dame will have a chance at the end to win. So Alabama will win that game, in my opinion. And I flip back to Ohio State. It seems like I've been going back and forth with these teams. I think the Buckeyes beat Clemson. I really liked what I saw from them against Michigan State. It shows you the potential. Clemson, 2 of their best receivers are out, and it looks like they may not be coming back. So that worries me a little bit about Clemson and their explosiveness on offense. I know it hasn't really seemed to be a problem, but they haven't exactly been playing elite competition. I know they did score some points on Notre Dame, but I just for whatever reason want to go back to this. What I originally thought, I thought Ohio State would beat Clemson. I think it's close. It is a game that comes down to the final play, but somehow, some way, the Buckeyes find a way to get revenge. They win this game. Then they play Alabama. It'll be a great game, but I just think Alabama is too good. They're just a complete team. And I know I say this every week. It's not fun for me to pick Alabama. It's a little bit painful. You guys know I'm an Auburn fan, but I think this is the best team in the country. I think they're the most complete team. If there is an area of weakness, it is the secondary, and I think that bodes well for Ohio State. So I think they will score in this game, but I don't know if they can stop Alabama. And so I just think Alabama's offense is too explosive, too good this year. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball. I think it's the best team, and I think the Tide will win the national championship. This was my preseason pick last year. I picked Alabama in the preseason to win the national championship. They didn't even make the college football playoff, and that was actually the first time that I had picked them to win it all. So if you're rooting against Alabama, maybe I jinxed them. Maybe they'll lose. Who knows? But I think they're going to win it. And then we look at the other contenders, the teams that could grab that number 4 spot if something were to happen. If Ohio State were to get upset, if Notre Dame were to beat Clemson a second time, I do think Clemson would then fall out. And it comes down to Texas A&M, Cincinnati, or Florida. And I put them in this order because I predict A&M to win the rest of their games. I predict Cincinnati to win the rest of their games. I don't predict Florida to beat Alabama. That's why I have them behind, even though Florida is the one team that controls their own destiny. If Florida were to beat Alabama, they will be in. It's a guarantee. There is no chance Florida is left out if they are a one-loss SEC champion with a win over Alabama and also a win over Georgia and a close loss on the road at Texas A&M, who will be a top 5 team. So yes, Florida will be in if they win. I just don't think it's going to happen. And this video is a prediction. I don't predict them to win. But if one of my predictions is wrong, if Notre Dame does beat Clemson, if Ohio State gets upset, if something goes against what I am predicting, then I think A&M would be that next team. Cincinnati's just not going to have the resume. The American is a good conference, but things didn't go their way. SMU really needed to have a little bit better year. They got upset a couple of weeks ago. That hurts. UCF is not having a great season. Tulsa will meet Cincinnati in the American Championship game. I believe they actually canceled this week's game because of COVID. So they're only going to play once. That could have been an opportunity for 2 good solid wins for Cincinnati. Now they're only going to get one of those. I guess in a way that could benefit them because one loss for Tulsa might keep them in the top 25, whereas 2 losses probably would have knocked them out. But I just don't think it's going to happen for Cincinnati. I think maybe they deserve it just because they've been undefeated and they've beaten some good teams, but they just don't have a signature win on the resume. I think A&M would get that number 4 spot. I know there's the argument that they're not going to put Alabama versus Texas A&M because they've already played. The first game was not close. I don't really see the committee. That's not their job. They're not going to match up teams. They just simply rank the teams, and I believe when they rank them, A&M would be number 4 if we do, again, see Clemson lose to Notre Dame or Ohio State get upset. I think that would happen. So I think A&M has a chance. You just got to be a big Notre Dame fan, a big Michigan fan. Well, not going to happen, but maybe a big Northwestern fan, and an Alabama fan. You don't need Florida to jump you by beating Alabama. So if things go right, A&M could make the college football playoff. Which, if you guys remember, I actually had Texas A&M making the college football playoff. A lot of people laughed at me in my preseason predictions. I had the Aggies going to the college football playoff. I had them losing to Alabama, not going to the SEC championship, but with that one loss, it was going to be enough to get in. Things haven't exactly gone that way. I think because of Notre Dame's success, that's what I missed. I think I had Notre Dame losing a couple of games, but because of their success, that's kind of taken that spot away from Texas A&M. But now you actually need Notre Dame to win. You need them to beat Clemson to get that final spot. So that'll be interesting to see. It could happen. They beat them once. They could beat them again. But I'm still right now sticking with Clemson. These are my updated playoff predictions. No real change from last week. The only change I made was I picked Ohio State over Clemson in the semifinal this time. And I may flip that back next week. Who knows? But I think the Final Four really, it's already set, and I think that's how it's going to stay. I would love to know your predictions. Leave them down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.